Hello everyone, welcome to Look at Finance. Today, we'll discuss the impact of the US presidential election on China specifically. If China had a choice, which candidate would be more aligned with its interests? Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? Let's explore from several angles to see which candidate's policies better align with China's long-term development. First, the stability of foreign policy. There is a significant difference in how Harris and Trump approach China. Harris tends to favor a multilateral approach, coordinating with allies to manage relations with China, resulting in a more moderate policy and relatively stable style. For China, this means there is an opportunity to keep US-China relations within a controllable range, where competition exists but does not escalate to the level of direct conflict or confrontational pressure, as seen under Trump. In contrast, Trump's policies are more aggressive, focusing on unilateralism and the America First strategy. His approach often brings uncertainty, as he is more inclined to directly use tariffs and sanctions as pressure tactics, leading to frequent friction in US-China relations. Thus, if Harris were elected, it could alleviate some of the diplomatic tensions China faces, allowing for more diplomatic space and opportunities for engagement in the Asia-Pacific and global affairs. Next, the economic and trade implications. In terms of economic and trade policies, Harris' approach is relatively moderate. She may retain some trade restrictions with China but is unlikely to adopt the extreme tariffs or confrontational stance characteristic of Trump. Harris' policies are more likely to maintain the fundamental trade framework, possibly allowing for continued trade cooperation in non-sensitive areas, which would help Chinese businesses alleviate external trade pressures and sustain basic stability in foreign trade. Trump's economic policies, on the other hand, are quite radical. His high tariff policies have significantly impacted US-China trade, causing considerable strain on many foreign trade enterprises. Trump's election could mean the continuation, or even escalation, of such high-pressure policies, which would further increase the burden on Chinese foreign trade companies and create a more unstable external economic environment. Regarding the sustainable development of the tech industry, technology is a core area of US-China competition. If Harris takes office, China may face more moderate restrictions in the tech sector. Her policies might still allow for some development space for Chinese tech companies, particularly in clean energy and green technology, potentially opening avenues for cooperation. This would be an opportunity for China's high-tech enterprises to continue developing in a relatively relaxed environment. Conversely, Trump's policies lean towards an extreme, technological decoupling strategy. This means he would not only clamp down on Chinese tech companies but could also push for stricter export controls and technology blockades. Examples include restrictions on Huawei and ZTE, and even potential blockages of chip supplies, creating immense pressure on Chinese tech firms. Thus, if Harris were elected, the innovation environment for China's tech sector would likely remain more favorable, promoting sustainable development in high-tech industries. On the stability of finance and exchange rates. In terms of finance and currency stability, Harris' policies are also relatively stable. She is unlikely to pursue extreme strong dollar policies or implement massive interest rate hikes. Such a policy direction would mean reduced volatility in global capital flows, leading to decreased pressure on the RMB exchange rate and lowering the risks of capital outflow, which would be beneficial for China's financial stability. Trump's policies, however, could introduce different pressures. He typically favors strong dollar policies, combined with financial sanctions, which would create significant fluctuations in the RMB exchange rate. Capital flows would also be impacted, especially if the dollar appreciates sharply, increasing the pressure of capital outflow and posing a direct threat to China's financial stability. Therefore, from the perspective of exchange rates and financial stability, Harris' policies undoubtedly align better with China's interests. Regarding fiscal pressure and debt management, from a fiscal standpoint, if Harris is elected, China would face relatively less pressure. Her policies are more moderate, and in responding to external pressures, China might not need to introduce particularly large economic stimulus plans, allowing fiscal and debt burdens to remain manageable. In contrast, if Trump were elected, it is expected that China would have to implement larger-scale economic stimulus policies to counteract external adverse effects due to increased pressure. This would require China to allocate more fiscal resources to stimulate the economy, consequently increasing its debt burden. In the long term, this would escalate fiscal pressures, posing risks to China's economic sustainability. On economic structural transformation, China's current economic development goal is to shift from high-speed growth to high-quality development, which requires a relatively stable external environment. If Harris is elected, her moderate policy style would provide a more relaxed environment, allowing China to focus more on structural reforms such as expanding domestic demand, promoting a green economy, and enhancing independent innovation. Such a moderate policy towards China better aligns with its current transformation needs, supporting high-quality economic development. If Trump were elected, due to his hardline policies, China might need to expend more resources to cope with external pressures, potentially slowing the progress of economic structural transformation. For example, to ensure economic growth, China might have to increase infrastructure investments and rely more on traditional stimulus measures, undermining the intensity of its transformation and upgrading efforts. Thus, from a long-term perspective, Harris' election aligns better with China's strategic needs. In summary, looking at foreign policy, trade, technology, and financial stability, Harris' election would align more closely with China's interests. Although the competitive relationship between the U.S. and China would not fundamentally change with a new president, Harris' more moderate policy tone would facilitate internal adjustments for China's economy and provide greater diplomatic flexibility. While Trump's hardline policies might bring some short-term benefits to the U.S., the long-term antagonism they create would lead to uncertainty in U.S.-China relations and the global economy. Therefore, from China's perspective, if given a choice, it would prefer Harris to be elected, as this outcome would allow China to achieve steady domestic economic development and high-quality growth in a relatively mild external environment, while continuing to expand its influence in international affairs. That concludes today's analysis. It's time to subscribe to this channel. See you in the next episode.